Hello, I'm Scott Soshnick.
And I'm Eben Novi-Williams, and this is the How Micro Can You Go Sports Business Podcast, the Sporticast.
All right, the listeners aren't watching you, Kelly, but you might know that I like to rate Eben's intros. So how micro can you go? I mean, that can go any direction. I thought his level of enthusiasm was a bit low. You know, if there's going to be some confusion as to what we're talking about, if it's not obvious, you better bring the performative aspect. So, Kelly Pracht, CEO of nVenue, please rate Eben Novi-Williams' intro to this podcast.
Oh gosh, it has to be like a 10. Like, that was good.
Oh, come on! Don't he's the junior member of this whole thing. Don't suck up to him.
Beautiful.
I like it. I like it. It's so much better than talking about boring predictive analytics. Like,
oh, wait a minute. We've got a whole show now.
Cross that off the list, Scott.
Yeah, exactly. Predictive analytics, forget it. Let me tell you, we'll get to the whole we'll get to what you do, Kelly. But I got to tell you, are you also involved in predictive analytics in terms of nVenue fan behavior as it would pertain to food and merch? Because I knew the Sacramento Kings for a while were toying with the idea of predicting what their season ticket holders in their premium sections would eat and what time they would eat it based on their previous dining consumptions. So I'm just curious, is that part of what you may sway into, or if you're not already doing it?
that is not part of what we do. However, the way we chose the name, you'd think it would be nVenue.
Yeah, nVenue, right?
Venue. No, we did when I was deciding to found this company, spend a lot of time analyzing what people do in stadium, but I really didn't grab the data on what they were ordering and how they ordered it. But maybe for another life or for the next business, right?
All right. Well, the natural follow-up then, because I can tell you how we came up with Sportico. Sitting around, and Jay Penske loves his portmanteaus, so that I thought it was a little too politico myself, but people seem to like the name. It's fine by me. How did you come up with nVenue?
We first wanted the name In Play, little In Play, and we were real excited about that name. And then the NBA named an app after In Play, and we thought that was too close. And out some of the folks we work with were the ones responsible for that, and we said, you stole our name, and then you didn't continue it. But I founded this company with my brother, and we were very, very into stadiums. Like that's everything that we're about. My dad used to take us to, instead of grand vacations to Disneyland, we'd be like at Mile High Stadium. I'd be doing cartwheels across the 50-yard line or something. So our life had been about stadiums, and we just said, why not nVenue? And it seemed to stick. So,
Kelly, we have people on often asking about origin stories for their companies, and obviously some people have aha moments. It sounds like you had an aha moment at some point that led to the start of nVenue.
I did. It's multifaceted, but it actually started. It started with the Yankees game. If you want to know the truth. We
want to know the truth. Let us get that out of the way right now. For the rest of the podcast, we'd like to know the truth.
You'd like to know the truth. You got it. No, I was leading large R&D teams at Hewlett Packard, and I actually was out here in 2015 for some business, and our business got canceled from the location we were supposed to be at, which was Yankee Stadium, and we had to move because the Yankees were in the wild card, and they were there facing Houston. And I'm from Houston, and I thought that would be pretty awesome. So I hopped in the stands hopped in the subway, my first ever subway ride, and went to Yankee.
Wait, did you go up the west side on the D, or did you do the number 4 on the east side?
I can't remember for the
We're getting the full story.
People ask me this all the time. For first timers going to the stadium, you can go either way, but I say take the 4 on the east side, because there's a moment which you exit the tunnel and you're an outdoor elevated train on the 4, and you see the grand, like, boom, Yankee Stadium hits you in the face.
That was it.
You took the 4. You were on the east side. Okay.
Yep. So whatever that one, yeah. So that was my first Yankees game, and I wanted to fit in. I even bought a Yankee shirt. I didn't stay true to my Houston Astros.
Wow.
And I sat there by myself in the stadium, and we won. By the way, the Astros won that game. I'm wearing my Yankee shirt, so I didn't celebrate for the Astros. But what I did during that game is I was texting my family and my friends and talking about the game. And what we were doing is we were not we were not talking about, certain things. I think like A-Rod didn't get much of hits that game. And it's like, why hasn't he hit yet? What's going to happen? Is
Well,
out too.
was this a postseason game?
It was a wild card. Yep.
See, simple predictive analytics. A-Rod's not going to get a hit in the postseason. Sorry,
Well,
sorry, Alex. Sorry if you're listening. Too easy.
I know, I know. So we sat there, and I sat there texting with friends and family, and what I was talking about what was to happen. Like, will the hit happen? Will we get a run here? Will this happen? And I started to listen to the fans around me, and they were doing the same thing. They weren't talking about various things or stats. They were talking about what the next play was, and that's where it clicked for me. Is we need products that tie people to the game so that they can interact in the next play. Now I just happened to be alone, and so I was making that connection happen for myself. But so what we call micro betting, that simply predicting the next play, we've been doing it forever. And so this was 2015, and I think not long after I started to do the code to do this, while I was concurrently leading large teams that were designing things like supercomputers for the United States government. So,
well, I'm gonna give you my first Yankee game experience, and then I'll let Novi Williams take over for a little while because I've been hogging some time here. But you'll know which game this was, my very first Yankee game. I wish there was predictive analytics and in-game betting then, because the first at-bat, I would have said, I bet Reggie Jackson hits a home run. And then your algorithms would have spun, and I would have said, I bet Reggie Jackson hits another home run. And then your algorithms would have spun, and then I would have said, as 7-year-old me, I bet Reggie Jackson hits another home run.
yeah.
And wow, and he did. So that's why I keep going back. But imagine if you were in one of these people today where you had your headphones in and you weren't paying attention to the world and you weren't listening. I love the fact, to me, that tells you, listening, paying attention, being aware of your surroundings, sparked the idea for the company. I love that.
No, it was pretty good, and it was a great win. And from 2015 on until I had the first working MVP. I probably went to over 100 games out at Minute Maid this time, a little closer to home, but it was a fun thing. Like, there's nothing more great than when you get to apply something you're really good at, which is tech for me, into something that you really love, which is sports, and it was a good time for sure. That was my aha story.
So you're building nVenue while working at Hewlett Packard. What's the moment where you decide, okay, nVenue is the full-time thing, that this is a good enough idea, the tech is good enough, the people you're talking to like it enough that you can make that the full-time career?
Yeah, so around 2018 was when we formally founded the company. We said, let's do this. It was pre-PASPA, the repealing of PASPA legislation, and we said we saw the writing on the wall that there's going to be a need for predictive analytics in live sports. Also, there was some Adam Silver op-ed pieces coming out, where it said, hey, the NBA wants to bet on free throws, and we want to do this. And he was talking about it in these pieces like it was this wildest imagination thing, like what if we could do this? Wouldn't that be great? And I happened to have tech in my hands that could do it. And so founded the company, waited a few months, and then literally cleared out my 401k. And in January of 2019 came full-time out, left HP, left a really safe and great job where I was advancing, and said, let's do this. My husband and I said, if not now, when? We've got an idea, the market fit is there, we have a working product, and there's a huge need for it, and just said go for it.
Eben, hold on, I got to jump in. Eben, hold on. I love the personal finance part of this all. Wait a minute. You paid the early withdrawal penalty on your 401k? That's the best seed financing you could come up with?
At the time, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's raising money is a whole episode in itself, right? Like, there's a lot of people to convince, and what I did is I said, I'm just going to take a year off and design this thing. And so with my co-founders, then we raised the money post that. So yeah, we did the unwise thing, but that's how I got started.
I'm also fascinated that you did this before PASPA got repealed, because when that happened, I think everybody knew eventually this was going to happen. Eventually the federal ban on sports betting was going to lift and sports were going to do their own thing. But it was kind of a surprise at the time that it had happened that early, at least in the circles that I was running in. I imagine that was a huge relief for you. It sounds like you kind of knew it might be coming, but suddenly to know that all these states were going to be rushing to do their own things and sports leagues were going to dive in, I imagine was a big relief.
It was so encouraging to see the leagues start to say, hey, we're interested in this. What Adam Silver was saying was fascinating to us. But really and truly, it was the engagement piece. There is no way to engage real time in sports, whether you're betting or whether you're not. That was what drove me. So yes, there was definitely a great avenue in betting on free throws or betting on the next at bats, but we weren't seeing great engagement otherwise. We were seeing things like win Terry's money or little trivia things that weren't working. And we said, whether or not the betting pans out, because it was still pretty early, right? We know that this engagement needs to happen, and there's a huge space for it. So it made sense to us, and that's what we banked everything on.
Should we give a shameless plug, Eben, and say the first time Adam Silver ever came out and said he was in favor of betting in sports was, I believe it was with one of our events at Sportico. Mm-hmm. Then he wrote the New York Times op-ed, and it really took off.
It was a previous employer of ours, Scott, not Sportico.
It was. We can say Bloomberg. That's fine.
Yeah,
it was our previous
Bloomberg.
employer.
Yeah.
Kelly, you'll laugh. I think you'll laugh at this one. I like to bring up my old friend David Stern all the time, and I'll never forget one time David and I were talking about sports betting. And you know how it was always made? It was always made to be sort of this puritanical thing. Like, we're against betting. We can't have betting. It's a bad thing. It's put it in there with the syntax stuff, right? And David said to me one time, and it really just, it brought it all together when you cover the business of sports. David said, Scott, when we're going to jump into sports betting with 2 feet? When there's enough money to make sense for us to jump into sports betting with 2 feet. That was it. It was a strictly financial issue. When the money is there, when it's worth our while, we will do it. And guess what? That day came, and you can see everybody from an NFL that used to prevent players from going to fantasy sports or being anywhere near fantasy sports. Everybody's adopting it whole hog. So I love the engagement piece as well. I mean, we hear so much about engagement. I heard you gave a stat. It was like 65% increase in engagement off one of your tests. Where do you see it, and what do you tell prospective clients?
Well, first of all, like betting and micro betting in particular is engagement. Like that's what it's about. It's about the game that you're watching. And so we won the NBA Launchpad selection this year, and we sat down with the NBA for several months and collaborated on what is the best bet that'll be most sticky. What we were concerned about was with the micro bets out today for the NBA, it's things like, what will the next shot be? Will it be a 2 made, a 2 miss, a 3 made, or 3 miss? And what we all said together was, this is not how people watch an NBA game. Like, you don't sit down and, like, you may have said that about the home run, right? Like, will he hit a home run now? Will he hit a home run now? But I don't watch a basketball game. Many people do not. Maybe some do. And think about, what will that next shot be? Maybe once, but usually we're talking about other things. And the NBA sat down and said, nVenue, this is a game of runs. Like, that's how people watch the sport. It's what's going to happen in the next, so many minutes, or is somebody going to go on a streak? And so we designed microbet to satisfy that. We called it First to 15, and there's a few other names that are out like that. But basically, we would reset the scoreboard every 15 points and say, who's going to get the next 15 points. And so we put that out to trial during NBA Finals, no pressure. That was our first trial. And we put it out on League Pass. And we took, somewhere near 80,000 user sessions and almost 300,000 free-to-play microbets with no frills. And they were, just pick the answer. And we recorded what happened. And we got the metrics back. And the people who engaged, they stayed almost 65% longer than somebody who wasn't interacting. And the point was, you say, well, I think it's going to be Miami. And you sit there and you watch those odds change with every possession change, with every shot. You know what you've picked. And then at the end of that 15-point session, then you get this little green light, and then it said, would you like to pick again? And so people kept doing it. And it was because it made sense with right now. Denver, in some cases, Denver was just like blowing them away. But Miami would win like little 15-point runs. And it kind of changed how we watched and how
the game within the game.
That's right.
And so you're kind of saying there, Kelly, that you can go 2 micro that if a full game is maybe too long for the purposes, but the result of the next shot is maybe too short, that there's a middle ground there for micro betting where you're cutting the game not into 2 seconds but into 15 points. Let's say it's 5 minutes of play. Is that the sweet spot right there?
The sweet spot is however the fan is watching the sport. And that's going to be different for each sport. So in the NBA, what we really categorize those windows as where the sweet spots of watching were around in a 7-minute range. So, giving bets that make sense in that 7-minute window made a lot of sense, and by the way, we could put out more than just, the first to 15. We could put out other things that would complement within that 7-minute window. But does a fan want to sit and bet on each basket? Maybe some do, but what we do is we study the fans and we use the leagues and their expertise because they know their fans best to figure out how to do that. And we're doing that same thing with NASCAR right now as we speak. How do fans watch a race, and what do the in-race micro bets need to be based on how fans watch?
I was going to ask you, there are some sports that lend themselves, I think, extremely well to micro betting, right? I don't think it's ironic, or it's not a coincidence that baseball was where you had this kind of aha moment because it's so structured in that way. And then there's sports on the other end. I've talked to the folks at Endeavor a lot about UFC. And one of the challenges that they have is just the gameplay and the way the fights work out. It's just not as structured. There's not as many stats and all that. And they're working on that. I think of NASCAR as towards that end also. That if baseball is really easy, NASCAR seems a little harder. How do you think about different sports and the way in which the gameplay interacts with creating micro bets?
Really and truly, and I'm not exaggerating, it's how a fan watches. So, we've been to a few NASCAR events and NASCAR races, and and we've talked with NASCAR, and their point of view is, well, let's break this down into the stages, like who's going to win each stage. So instead of like this, many laps, who's going to be the winner, like who's going to be the stage winner, and who's going to place within the stage. Those are starting to get a little bit more granular. Baseball, for example, I don't know about you guys, but when you watch a baseball game, how often do you think is the next ball, is the next pitch going to be a curveball or a fastball? Like, every now and then, but do you think that the whole time? Are you
not really? No.
Maybe not.
I think that's part of the beauty of baseball. I actually do think it's a pitch-by-pitch science, and he set him up with a fastball. I bet he comes back with a slow. And by the way, if you notice, a lot of stadiums these days, they'll tell you what that pitch was along with the speed. So somebody must be wanting it if stadiums are putting it on the scoreboard.
Absolutely. And with about 300 pitches per game, like that's something that we do offer. But I think what gets really fun is when you start combining those up into, well, it'll be a pitch ball or it'll be a fastball and, he'll swing or, like there's all kinds of combinations. So when we think about micro bets, we like I said, we look at what fans are actually doing, how they think of the game. Is it game of runs? Now that doesn't mean we're not going to offer the shots as well in basketball, but we like to find those certain bet windows. We like to say that, in a game of blackjack, the game doesn't start until the player, comes to the table and puts some chips down. And that's how we see micro betting. Like we want to start that engagement when, for whatever time the bettor is going to give us and make the most of that. That's our vision on micro bets.
I like the whole idea now. Let's extrapolate that blackjack. Like you can double down on a bet if the count goes to 0-2. Mm-hmm. This I like, Eben. What do you say? How much trouble could we get in with this?
A lot of trouble.
This is the portion of the show. By the way, we're chatting with Kelly Pracht, CEO of nVenue. This is the portion of the show where I like our friends to think and roll their eyes and say, "Did Scott really say that?" Yeah. So Kelly, I'm sure you don't want to offer odds on, let's say, how do fans watch an NBA game? Will Draymond Green be ejected today? I mean that's the. I'm guessing we don't have that as part of the nVenue offerings.
No, and there's some that you have to be careful with. Like there's some we also predict hit by pitch. That's not something that we want to put out. Also, like it seems a little dark, but our odds do pick up on who gets hit by pitch more than others. So we will see spikes on those. We just probably won't be offering the hit by pitch particular micro bet, but certainly.
That reminds me, the folks at Zebra, who had a partnership with the NFL for a long time on data, had chips in players in shoulder pads. And one of the things they were collecting early on was the speed of the deceleration when players got hit, how fast they were going and how quickly they got to zero. And I think very quickly everyone around the league and around Zebra realized that of the data they were going to put out publicly, how quickly someone decelerated from 20 miles an hour to zero was maybe not on the list of things that the NFL really wanted out there.
Yeah, biometrics would be great, but you know what you're not going to see, and I can remember my old class in high school. F equals m times a, right? Huh, Kelly, help me out here. Force equals mass times acceleration. Eben was
Very
a
nice.
lightweight football player, so the mass and the constant was very low. And knowing him also, the acceleration was probably pretty low. But the NFL does not want that sort of data out. Kelly, help me out here, though. Give me on the business of sport. Obviously, if you tapped into your 401k, it wasn't like everybody was throwing money at these ideas. I get the sense now, though, that buzzwords for investors, sports adjacent, media, tech, that's a hot thing. What's the difference between raising money then and, not that you are right now, but raising money now, and how do you see the ecosystem?
Well, it's been a tough couple of years out in the ecosystem of raising money, just, due to the market itself. But, you know, sports tech is hot. Microbets are hot, but the truth is there's not a lot of us out there doing this. So it's still a rough ecosystem, if you want to know the truth, on raising. And I think once you start raising, you're always raising, right? So we're always in that camp. We've raised, just under 9 million at this point, building up this platform that does billions and billions of microbets in the course of a year. So it's still a tough landscape, but it's definitely taking off. Microbets are on everybody's roadmap right now. We're getting traction. We look at the changes over the last couple of years. On back when 2 years ago, when we really started in earnest on pivoting to microbets. Microbets were really something that was still kind of futuristic. We'll see if it works out. The very first microbet came out with DraftKings and MLB, and that was kind of testing the waters for all of us, due to some first movers and earlier adopters, and that was fantastic. But it's taken a couple of years for that to get on everybody's roadmap. We need it, and now we're in this point where we're going to start to see microbets take off, I believe, in the next year, with multiple suppliers, multiple ways to bet.
One of the things I've kind of always wondered about microbets, and it doesn't really apply to the 7-minute microbet, but definitely for the much smaller ones, is the technology that people have in their homes around watching, right? Streaming. I am often in my apartment here in New York City. I'm sometimes a minute and a half behind actual gameplay, right? And that immediately eliminates a lot of types of bets that I could maybe place if my broadband was faster, or if I was sitting in the stadium. I am
Eben,
curious.
would you care to provide the name of your internet provider just for the heck of it? I'm curious.
I believe it is Spectrum. Yeah.
Okay.
And in New York City, for example, I think it's the only operator I'm allowed to have in this building. It's not like I have 15 choices. Some buildings in New York, you only have the one ISP provider that does it. And I'm curious, Kelly, how much you think about the way that as streaming accelerates. I do think we're in this weird point on the technology where a lot of people are further behind watching at home than they used to be if they were watching 5 years ago, and how much that affects their ability to do a lot of the micro betting that you're providing.
Yeah, definitely, it's something that we talk about a lot. When we first took that leap and created our platform, we also created an app so that we could play along in real time, and that's where we were first really exposed to how many people have different services, who's watching on streaming, which could be, you're right, it could be huge delays, 30-second to a minute, like it's all over the map, versus I think Comcast for back at home at Houston was about 12 seconds delay. So we were faced with, how do you sync that up? How do you time the bets? But we also realized once we played around and got where everybody was working and playing as they were watching, because we weren't doing money bets, we found that watching and betting is much more powerful. Like it's much more engaging. But right now, today, if you're sitting in your apartment and you're watching and you pull up your apps, your sportbook apps where you could bet on those things, they're not synced at all. So something like a pitch by pitch, you have to make a choice. Yeah, so the truth is the technology exists that gives us zero latency or near zero latency streaming, and as we start to pair our live microbet feed, that's real time, looking forward, and zero latency streaming, all of these things that you're experiencing with big delays, well, that's going to be a thing of the past. So we're getting closer and closer to that place where we can actually watch and bet together more naturally. And it's happening. I expect it'll be another year or two before we start to really see that in perpetuity.
Hey, Kelly, can you give me a breakdown of users demographically in terms of age?
For betting.
Yeah.
At this point, I've seen studies out there, and since we're more of a B2B provider at this point, we're not very privy to all of that, but we do a lot of studies on that, and it's still in the sports betting world, the demographic is still highly male. 18 to 35 is where it's been living for the most part. I'm really excited about things that the front ends and that the sports books are doing to capture more women's votes, because women watch sports almost as much as men. I think the
what are they doing? If I can interject, what are they doing to capture female? Like what do I put out there to capture a female vote?
Well, I love what ESPN Bet is starting to do, and I love their advertising and how it's starting to be more inclusive in that sense. But bottom line, we need to start turning those front ends to something where women will play along with as well. Although I'm not necessarily the voice to speak for all of that, because this is that's a big industry solution that's coming. But I would love to see the demographic shift and have where it includes everybody, because micro bets are about casual betting. It's about that casual fan, and that's where you really start to expand that demographic. That's the typical sports betting demographic. So I think there's going to be a lot of shifts on that front.
I've wondered about this a lot, actually, that the demographics of sports books and a lot of betting companies just don't align up, from a gender breakdown at least, definitely don't align with the gender breakdown of the fans of that sport. And I have wondered if it is a product problem, if it is an advertiser problem, if there are just differences in how people consume things. It's been something that I've thought about a lot as well.
When we put out our app and we ran our studies on small scale over the 2019 MLB playoffs, we asked all of our family and friends and everybody we knew played, and we watched the betting patterns. This is a very, very small scale, but what we saw was, how casual fans are going to be the ones that dictate this. And when we start to put out ways for casual fans to interact and engage, women too, men that aren't as avid as some of the sports betting typical demographic, then things get really powerful because they stay and they play longer because it's more inclusive. They're watching as well. The casual betting and micro betting opens up a whole new pretty much a whole new category. It's just very different than your typical sports betting different demographic, and we're really excited about that. And that's tied so closely with watch and bet as well. Like, how you engage people while they watch, how you engage, go all the way back to that playoff wildcard game where I was in Yankee Stadium. How do you engage me in that particular moment? You make that happen, microbets can do it, then I think we can really radically change and shift the whole world of fan engagement in sports, including betting.
And I don't want to be the downer here, but we do know that all sports leagues are trying to figure out how to reach kids. And I have my 14-year-old focus group of one, and this scares the bejesus out of me. The fact that my credit card is linked on his Xbox, he's got to have it for whenever. And he's got his community of friends on Snapchat that I am not monitoring. And I just really, really put up a big caution flag. I've had the talk with him about, who makes money in casinos? The owners. And about you keep going, you're eventually going to lose your money. And we do that with a lot of things with our kids. But damn, I got to tell you, Kelly, it scares the bejesus out of me that I've got a 14-year-old in a world where you can reach right into his brain anytime you want through that phone. And I'm just not sure what he's doing. And flat out is an addictive behavior.
Yeah, responsible gaming is super important, and I do like what I see. All of the sports books really are out there doing some things that help that. We believe it's super important. How we contribute into some of that is some of our work, like with U.S. integrity, to make sure that the bets are clean and doing technology innovations to help with that. And that's also an area that's going to grow over time. But yeah, absolutely share your concern. Anything that's an addictive behavior is certainly a concern. And I look forward to a lot of the front end solutions that will help with that, because that's yeah, we have the similar concerns.
All right, I'm not ending on a downer, though. Give me. You said you're B2B, picking up on that, since you have the talks with the leagues. Give us a glimpse, please. Give us a glimpse of the strategy from anything you can sort of say this is a commonality among strategy among sports leagues from the talks they're having with you. Where are we headed? Where are they headed? What are they looking at?
You know, really what's in common with each and every league that we've been talking to and have been working with is they see this as an experience. You win the fan experience, it amplifies the value of everything in the chain. They make more money because they're giving fans what they want, and it's just a virtuous cycle of good. And give fans ways to connect, ways to engage, and it just flows all the way around. That's what I'm seeing happen. Like, make the experience really whole, make it about the game, make it relevant. They're all very, very focused on that. That's exciting, because that's exactly why we founded nVenue, is to build experiences that interact with the game. And I also see the leagues being highly responsible, highly concerned about responsible gaming. There's lots of work happening in that area, and we're just very, very happy to play a part in this, because like going back to those Adam Silver pieces back, the ones that I first read were around 2014, and that vision's happening now, and we have a lot of work. By the way, Adam was talking about responsible gaming even back then on how we address it. So we've got work to do, but golly, it's such an exciting time.
Speaking of focus, wait, hold on. Speaking of focus, Eben, if you haven't noticed that, there's been sunspots on me here working at home. I forget where the sun is. I've been holding up a notebook, so
I was
this isn't
going to
in my
mention
face
this
the whole time.
exact thing, Scott, before I
All
closed
right.
that for the
So
past 15 minutes you've been holding the thing up.
I've been holding this here, so I mean, it's not so bad right now, but 5 minutes ago it was like blaring right in my face. So how about that focus, Eben Novi Williams? I just want that noted for the record.
Man can do two things at once. Kelly Pracht, CEO of nVenue, thank you very much for joining us. You can find Kelly on Twitter at KJ Pracht. He is Scott Soshnick. You can find him
I talk
on
over
Twitter
him, Kelly, at the end, because I like to see if I can throw him off.
I am
but he's
Eben
not
Novi
allowed
Williams.
to stop.
You
He
can
has to
find
keep
me on
doing
Twitter
the close.
at Novi
So far, you've done very well, and you knew her.
The show
your
is
Twitter feed that you knew
by
her.
Erin Greenewald.
Erin
Thank
Greenewald.
you very much to
thanks
Erin.
to her again.
Sporticast digital media
now
editor Cora Veltman would like you to know that you can follow the Sporticast at Sporticast, which is the hub of the Sportico Media Network.
Attaboy.